On March the 24th of 2016, Rocky County Sheriff's deputies were called to Diamond Jim's strip club in Janesville, Wisconsin. Dispatchers received a report of a man who'd been bitten in the crotch by one of the adult entertainers in the club. 24-year-old Derek Roth reportedly told responding deputies that he'd given the adult entertainer, 29-year-old Meshiokia White, money to do her thing. Roth explained further that he requested White to put her head into his crotch. He claimed that the woman did so, but later allegedly bit his crotch. When a deputy questioned White, she appeared to be intoxicated and didn't remember what had transpired, a police report stated. However, surveillance footage from inside the club captured the shocking incident and corroborated Roth's story. White was taken into custody and booked into the Rock County Jail on a battery charge. It was unclear if Roth suffered any injuries from the incident and what sort of punishment White received. Number 9. Grace SPOONAMORE. An intoxicated woman was reportedly trying to seduce a police officer in Brunswick, Ohio, during her hit-and-run traffic stop in April of 2023. It all started when 20-year-old Grace SPOONAMORE sped off at a green light before slamming into a Chevy Cruze within clear view of the officer. According to a police report, the Georgia native was driving a blue Buick Enclave, which came back with felony warrants attached when the officer checked its license plate. When SPOONAMORE appeared to be fleeing, the officer followed her and eventually pulled her over. The officer noted that SPOONAMORE appeared disoriented, with slurred speech and bloodshot eyes. She initially denied being under influence, but when another officer responded, she admitted to having had 6 drinks. After being put in handcuffs, SPOONAMORE was asked if she had anything on her that the officers should be aware of, to which she responded, "I don't know, you want to check me?" When she was asked about her current address, she refused to give it. Body cam footage from the arrest showed that as the officer was telling her to get into the police car, she called him a handsome man and said, "You feel some type of way 'cause my leg ain't in the car?" The woman later said that she was an exotic dancer. When one of the officers was filling out paperwork for the arrest, SPOONAMORE allegedly spat on him. While officers were taking her to the police station, she threatened to urinate on the officer's face, saying she'd do it only if he liked it. She ultimately did pee her pants in the back seat of the cruiser, claiming she couldn't help it. Inside the police station, she repeatedly attempted to take off her pants while waiting for her mugshot to be taken. As SPOONAMORE continued to ignore instructions from the officer, she told him that she'd be okay with getting tasered because she liked it kinky. In the end, she was arrested on suspicion of speeding, operating a vehicle under the influence, obstructing official business, and simple assault on an officer. Medina County court records indicated that she was also charged with at least 1 count of harassment with a bodily substance, purportedly for spitting on the officer. The video of the incident went viral on YouTube, amassing more than 1 million views in September of 2023. As of the latest update, SPOONAMORE's criminal trial was set to begin in October of 2023. Number 8. OLIVIA BENNETT. At around 5:30 a.m. on March the 29th of 2015, a Canadian tourist was critically injured after a hit-and-run near King of Diamonds nightclub in Miami, Florida. Alexander San Juan had traveled to Miami for a music festival. The 22-year-old was walking away from the aforementioned club when a blue BMW 328i, which was reportedly speeding through the intersection of Northwest 178th Street and Northwest 5th Avenue, hit him. The driver of the vehicle, later identified as 26-year-old exotic dancer OLIVIA BENNETT, who worked at the nightclub, allegedly drove off and later dumped her damaged vehicle. San Juan sustained a blow to the head and was taken to the trauma unit of Jackson Memorial Hospital, where he was placed in a medically induced coma. His shoulder and leg were also left shattered, while other parts of his body suffered lacerations, NBC News reported. After the incident, police found Bennett's car, which had damage consistent to what was found at the crash site. The car had been abandoned in the parking lot of another nightclub at 150 Northwest 183rd Street. An arrest report stated that Bennett turned herself in the following day. She was facing several charges, including leaving the scene of a crash and reckless driving. A day later, Bennett was released from jail after posting a $12,500 bond. According to Sanguan's family, he was moved from the intensive care unit in mid-April and was expected to recover within 2 years. Records indicate that Bennett was convicted of leaving the scene of a crash with serious injury and was sentenced to 4 years of community control probation. Number 7. Paige Nicole Merritt. A Florida police officer from the Sunrise Police Department, together with his girlfriend, was caught selling marijuana from their home. The officer, 27-year-old Joseph Rodriguez Santiago, was cited late in September of 2013 for possession of marijuana and drug paraphernalia. He was then placed on administrative leave, and eventually he resigned from his position. His girlfriend, 21-year-old Paige Nicole Merritt, was facing 2 felony charges after she allegedly sold marijuana to a confidential informant on 2 different occasions, during which the informant was wearing an audio and video monitoring device. On the second occasion, Rodriguez Santiago was present as well. Merritt reportedly sold a total of $60 worth of marijuana to the informant. On September the 25th, police obtained a search warrant for the home. Upon arrival at the home, they stopped Merritt, who was about to leave. Upon stopping her, detectives immediately smelled marijuana and asked her if she had any on her. Subsequently, she pulled 2 plastic bags containing marijuana from underneath her bra. Merritt admitted she was on her way to the Goldfinger Gentlemen's Club, where she worked as an exotic dancer, to sell the marijuana. An arrest report indicated that marijuana, a scale, plastic bags, a drug grinder, and smoking clips were found inside the home. Merritt was taken to jail, while Rodriguez Santiago was issued a notice to appear in court. It never became clear if the couple were convicted of the charges against them and if they served any jail time. But Rodriguez Santiago never returned to his job as a police officer. Number 6. Willow Martin. In July of 2016, 19-year-old Willow Martin from Naugatuck, Connecticut, was accused of setting fire to a business after a potato had incriminated her with the crime. Apparently, the fire stemmed from a plot to get back at her former best friend, Breonna Constantino. Martin and Constantino worked as exotic dancers at a strip club in Southington, but they had a falling out over money. Martin had lent $1,200 to Constantino during a trip in the summer of 2015 so that the latter could buy some new clothes, according to an arrest warrant. However, when Constantino wasn't able to pay her the complete amount back, Martin allegedly planned to burn down the construction business that belonged to Constantino's stepfather. In the early hours of September the 15th of 2015, the business located on Waterbury Road in Prospect was set ablaze. At approximately 5 a.m., the fire department responded and extinguished the fire. When Constantino's stepfather was alerted about the fire, he was about to drive over when he found a potato in his vehicle's tailpipe. Once at the scene, he handed it over to the authorities. The potato was then processed for DNA, tying it to Martin's boyfriend, Matthew Garguillo, aged 28. On July the 7th of 2016, law enforcement served an active arrest warrant on Garguillo, who was already incarcerated on an unrelated matter. When he was questioned by the police, he told them that Martin was the one who'd placed the potato in the exhaust pipe. He admitted being there with her at the business, but claimed that Martin was the one who set the fire using a can of gasoline and a flaming napkin. He also told officers about Martin and Constantino's falling out and how it had motivated the crime. For his involvement, Garguillo was charged with conspiracy to commit arson, conspiracy to commit criminal mischief, and conspiracy to commit possession of a burglar's tool. He was held in custody on a $20,000 bond. On July the 12th, Martin herself was arrested on several charges, including burglary, criminal mischief, possession of burglar's tools, and 5 counts of conspiracy. She was held on a $110,000 bond. In May of 2018, Martin was sentenced to 8 years in prison after pleading guilty to second-degree arson. She would be required to serve 8 years of special parole after serving her time behind bars. It is unclear if Garguillo was found guilty of any of the charges in connection to the incident. Number 5. Shauna Miller. In Las Vegas, Nevada, 28-year-old Shauna Miller was handed a 5 to 15-year prison sentence on September the 16th of 2014 for a DUI crash that killed a man. The ordeal unfolded at around 7:30 a.m. on March the 23rd, 2013, when Miller drove through a red light at the intersection of Spring Mountain and Wynn Roads. Subsequently, the woman crashed her 2003 Hummer into a 1997 Ford Escort, driven by James White, aged 33. In the aftermath, White succumbed to his injuries and his toddler son, who was in the back seat, survived but sustained bruises and a skull fracture. According to the prosecutor, there were no tire marks at the intersection, noting that Miller didn't attempt to brake. Miller told responding officers that she'd taken Xanax and drank 2 beers at Spearmint Rhino Gentlemen's Club on Highland Drive, where she worked as an exotic dancer. After failing 2 stages of a sobriety test, she was arrested. In July of 2014, Miller pleaded guilty to driving under the influence of alcohol, resulting in death and substantial bodily harm. During her sentencing hearing, the court heard that at the time of the incident, Miller's blood alcohol level was more than twice the legal limits and that she had marijuana in her system. The Las Vegas Review-Journal reported that Miller apologized to the victim's family, saying, "I'm very, very sorry." White's mother responded, "Not in this lifetime." Miller was also ordered to pay more than $40,000 in fines and restitution. After serving her 5 to 15-year sentence, Miller would be required to drive with an alcohol monitoring device for 3 years. Number 4. Brittany Curry. 55-year-old Missouri man Ralph Edward Cross was found dead at his home in Wilson City on the morning of August the 1st of 2017. Investigators determined Cross had died from a gunshot wound to the middle of his back. No weapon was found at the scene, but investigators did find a 9mm shell casing. Investigators said that furniture inside the home was disarranged and the victim's pockets had been turned inside out, pointing to a possible robbery. As the investigation continued, a witness came forward to report seeing Cross and a woman in the former's vehicle just hours before his death. Later, investigators lifted a latent fingerprint from the front passenger window of his car. Captain Barry Morgan with the Mississippi County Sheriff's Office stated in the probable cause statement that more witnesses claimed to have seen Cross assist 4 women in fixing the flat tire on their car. Apparently, Cross had offered them shelter in his home while he bought a new tire for them. One of the witnesses told the investigators that the last time he saw Cross was shortly before 7 a.m. on August the 1st. He added that he'd seen one of the women outside Cross's home in a white vehicle, and the other 3 were inside arguing with Cross. The witness claimed to have heard a noise and then noticed the 3 females hurrying out of the house before getting into a white car and driving away. On August the 3rd, the Missouri State Highway Patrol's crime laboratory identified the latent fingerprint from Cross's car as belonging to Lortisha Dotson, aged 23. That same day, Dotson, along with 28-year-old Brittany Curry, 23-year-old Ponesha Taylor, and 19-year-old Jonisha Simmons, turned themselves into police custody. The police determined that the women were adult entertainers who'd been in Missouri after allegedly advertising escort services online. The women told the officers that they'd been at Cross's home but stated that he was alive when they left. Captain Morgan separately interviewed the women. 2 of him told him that Curry was the one who fatally shot the victim. All 4 women were then held in custody without bail on charges of first-degree murder, armed criminal action, and unlawful use of a weapon. They all pleaded not guilty to the charges during their initial court appearance on August the 9th. In October of 2019, Curry had pleaded guilty to second-degree murder in the shooting death of Cross and was sentenced to 16 years behind bars. It is unclear if any of the other women pleaded guilty as well or if any of them were even convicted. Number 3. Lydia Leon Bertuccia Maria. Lydia Leon Bertuccia Maria, who worked as an adult entertainer at a nightclub in Largo, Florida, was arrested after she allegedly stole $1,300 from a patron's wallet. The incident took place at the Atlantis Gentlemen's Club on the 11600 block of 66th Street on the night of July the 14th of 2018. According to an arrest report, 26-year-old Maria was giving a private dance to the male patron. During the private dance, Maria took 65 $20 bills from the man's wallet without his permission. Subsequently, she attempted to leave the club but was stopped by security. Law enforcement were then called to the location. Maria reportedly admitted to stealing the money and was booked into the Pinellas County Jail on a charge of grand theft. Records indicated that she was released on her own recognizance. Today's topic was requested by Mandy Pandy 01, Goldenack, and River Parish. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Hustlers. On January the 8th of 2016, 2 exotic dancers who were part of a ring that scammed wealthy clients were sentenced in Manhattan Supreme Court. Marcy Rosen and Karina Pascucci, aged 29 and 27 respectively, were sentenced to weekends in jail for 4 months and 5 years probation after pleading guilty to conspiracy, assault, and grand larceny. According to the City Office of the Special Narcotics Prosecutor, the women drugged their clients and drove them to various New York City gentlemen's clubs. There, they stripped the clients of their credit cards, racked up thousands in charges, and later blackmailed those victims who threatened to go to the police. The initial crimes occurred between September of 2013 and December of 2013. The ring was busted when one victim contacted the DEA, causing the agency to set up a sting operation. Law enforcement started tracking their activities in 2014, and eventually, Rosen and Pascucci were arrested along with the ringleaders Rosalind Keogh and Samantha Barbash. In March of 2016, 31-year-old Keogh pleaded guilty to grand larceny and attempted assault in exchange for 5 years of probation. 41-year-old Barbash was also given 5 years of probation after pleading guilty to conspiracy, assault, and grand larceny. Their story was later adapted into a film. It was titled Hustlers and opened to $33.1 million at the domestic box office in 2019. We have more cases lined up from a previous video. Stay tuned after number 1 if you'd like to watch those as well. Number 1. Violating San Antonio's ordinance. Texas law enforcement in San Antonio arrested 4 dancers at a gentleman's club on February the 5th, 2015 for allegedly revealing a little bit too much skin, as reported by the Times-Union. According to a San Antonio Police Department report, undercover police officers went to Sugar's Club on the Northwest Loop to investigate a complaint about possible escort services being offered at the club. Upon entering the club, they reportedly saw 2 dancers pulling down the waistband of their thongs and revealing the crevice of their buttocks, which violated the city ordinance prohibiting nudity in erotic-oriented businesses. The report also stated that 2 other women who appeared to be entertainers were also showing their natal clefts while standing near a bar. The 4 women, namely Jessica Lynn Mastbergen, Julie Marie Marks, Aurora Junko, and Nora Isela Gerdes, were taken into custody on a charge of violating the city ordinance. 2 managers of the club, Enrique Avalar and Albert Cortez, were also arrested for failing to comply with the ordinance. Number 7. Melissa Dacia and Niesh Rivera. Exotic dancers Melissa Dacia and Niesh Rivera, aged 22 and 25 respectively, were arrested by law enforcement in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, for stealing a police officer's gun in February of 2019. The latter had been communicating with Rivera, who'd assumed the pseudonym Natalia on Instagram. Aside from dancing, she worked as an escort and had been among several exotic dancers arrested for offering illegal services at the Foxy Lady in Pawtucket in December of the previous year. She and the off-duty officer went to Nara Lounge in Providence, where they met Dacia before the trio headed to the Cadillac Lounge Gentlemen's Club. Prior to doing so, the Boston officer, whose identity wasn't disclosed, secured his service Glock handgun with a cable lock in the glove compartment of his BMW 328i. After going to the club, the trio went to the officer's room at the Hampton Inn to reportedly hang out. In the early hours of the morning, Dacia claimed she needed to retrieve a charger from the officer's car, and he gave her the keys. She briefly came back and said she needed to step out and make a call before leaving again. Rivera claimed she'd go look for her, but both women never returned. The officer then checked his car and found that his pistol was missing from the glove box, at which point he alerted local authorities. Both of the women were subsequently arrested and charged with felony larceny of a firearm and conspiracy, while the officer's weapon was retrieved. Number 6. Lee Grace Dougherty. Leading up to August of 2011, Florida woman Lee Grace Dougherty, aged 29, had worked as an exotic dancer and adult model, but her career abruptly ended when her brother got into legal trouble. She lived in Lacoochee, Florida, along with her younger brothers Ryan and Dylan, aged 21 and 26 respectively. The trio all had criminal records, but the former had recently violated the terms of his parole by engaging in inappropriate online communication with a minor. Lee Grace and Dylan orchestrated an escape plan of taking their brother to Mexico. On August the 2nd, the trio's white Subaru Impreza was spotted by a Zephyrhills police officer going over the speed limit on US 301. When the officer initiated a traffic stop, the Doughertys engaged him in a 100-mile-per-hour chase. The pursuit ended in about 4 miles after Dylan had shot at the cruiser up to 20 times. One of the bullets struck a tire, disabling the vehicle as the trio sped out of the county. They then carried out a bank robbery in Valdosta, Georgia. The Doughertys entered the building wearing masks, and one of them discharged an AK-47 into the ceiling before they made off with roughly $5,200. The trio's rampage ended in Pueblo, Colorado, 9 days after it had begun, in a shootout with local law enforcement. By then, Lee Grace had become one of the U.S.'s most wanted women. As the Subaru was chased by officers, Ryan drove it at speeds of up to 120 miles per hour, weaving in and out of traffic through construction zones and highway shoulders. Simultaneously, Dylan shot at pursuing cruisers with the AK. The 20-mile chase ended with Ryan crashing into a highway guardrail. He and Lee Grace jumped out of the disabled vehicle and fled on foot, but Dylan was arrested while still inside. When law enforcement closed in on them, the exotic dancer pointed a machine pistol at an officer and was non-fatally shot in the thigh. The Doughertys were taken into custody. During a court appearance a few days later, Lee Grace caught media attention by smiling in court and appearing to be in high spirits while still wheelchair-bound from the injury. She told the court, "I pointed the gun at the cop. I deserve to get shot." No fatalities or major injuries were reported during the Doughertys' rampage, but their actions resulted in a plethora of charges for which each was sentenced to decades behind bars. Number 5. KRISTINA Hensley. 35-year-old exotic dancer KRISTINA Hensley was sentenced to 10 years in prison in April of 2011 after pleading guilty to involuntary manslaughter and failure to stop after an accident. In August of the previous year, she'd been called to the home of Jai Chow in Monroe, about 25 miles north of Cincinnati, Ohio, for a private show. Hensley would later tell the authorities that Cho had touched her inappropriately during the performance, prompting her to leave his home. The prosecution would argue during her trial that she'd fled the residence after robbing Cho. The latter went outside and jumped in front of Hensley's SUV, trying to stop her. The exotic dancer accelerated, ran the 31-year-old man over, and dragged him underneath her car for more than a mile before stopping at a gas station. Cho was mangled beneath the vehicle and suffered multiple blunt force trauma injuries that resulted in his death. The autopsy photos were described as very hard to look at by the Hamilton Journal news media outlet. Hensley, who at the time worked as a dancer to support her 3 children, subsequently told the police that she'd felt her SUV strike something but maintained she had no idea Cho was beneath it when she started driving away. She was initially charged with murder, aggravated robbery, theft, and failure to stop before pleading guilty to lesser charges. Number 4. Leon Zbadowski. In February of 2013, a brawl erupted at the Baltic Inn in the village of Pontiates, South Wales, following the last-minute replacement of a male exotic dancer. Roughly 150 women had packed into the pub to watch an experienced performer named Fabio, whom they'd each paid £10 to see. He had to cancel, and the fantasy strip agency sent in 29-year-old novice performer Leon Zbadowski, who, come showtime, walked on stage in a fireman's uniform that didn't fit properly. The crowd soon reacted in disappointment. As reported by one woman in attendance, he lacked Fabio's signature six-pack and looked like he'd come off the street. She went on to say that Spadowski, a practicing boxer, looked like he'd been hit in the face with a wok. Additionally, the man didn't have a dance routine and spat frothy cream at the women before he sat on a chair in the middle of the stage and just glared at them. The women started booing and throwing napkins at the stage, which enraged Spadowski. He jumped into the ladies' night crowd and started attacking them. He pulled a woman's hair before charging the compere and the manager. 5 police cars were sent to break up the scuffle and Spadowski was taken into custody. He subsequently admitted 3 common assault charges and was ordered to undergo a mental health evaluation. Number 3. Bingo and exotic dancing. A nursing home in Taiwan issued a public apology in September of 2022 after a video went viral of an exotic dancer entertaining more than a dozen wheelchair-bound seniors. Staff at Taoyuan Veterans Home, a state-run facility in Taoyuan City for retired Army personnel, decided to hire an exotic dancer as part of upcoming Harvest Festival celebrations. On September the 7th, in what would have been an ordinary bingo afternoon for residents, a young woman wearing high heels and lingerie arrived at the nursing home. She began her routine, which also involved giving the seniors lap dances as they and staff clapped along to music. The dancer was vivaciously interacting with the residents and at one point was seen pushing her breasts into a senior's face. The footage went viral, and while the consensus was that the dancer was just doing her job, the veterans' home decision to hire her was criticized. A spokesman subsequently apologized, arguing that the young woman's moves had been too enthusiastic and fiery, and pledged to be more careful when planning such events in the future. Number 2. Chad Satchell. The elite Special Response Group in Perth, Australia, closed down a street in the city in August of 2022 following reports that a man clad in a bulletproof vest and carrying an assault rifle had been spotted in the Kings Street area. Heavily armed law enforcement units swarmed on the suspect, identified as 31-year-old Chad Satchell. They learned that in spite of the initial panic, the man wasn't an active shooter but an exotic dancer on his way to work. His costume was meant to be a provocative version of a SWAT officer, and his rifle, in spite of its realistic appearance, was intended to be a prop. He was detained without incident and was reported as cooperative in the immediate aftermath. The adult performer still faced a hefty fine or even jail time, as the police suspected his rifle was a gel pellet blaster, which shoots water-filled gel projectiles at up to 100 meters per second. They were outlawed in Western Australia as part of an effort to combat criminal elements who would smuggle the replicas into the country and convert them into real weapons. As of subsequent developments, the police were conducting tests on Satchell's confiscated rifle to determine whether the prop feature had been disabled. The exotic dancer faced maximum penalties of up to 3 years in jail and a $36,000 fine. Number 1. Jasmine Clifford. In 2021, an exotic dancer from New Jersey was identified as the mastermind behind an operation that produced and sold at least 250 fake COVID-19 vaccination cards. As reported by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, 31-year-old Jasmine Clifford advertised the fraudulent services using the Instagram account Anti-Vax Mama. She would charge $200 per card, and for an additional $250, customers could get their name in the New York State Immunization Information System. Her alleged co-conspirator, 27-year-old Nadeza Barkley, handled the registration through her position at a medical clinic in Pachogue. Over a dozen of the exotic dancer's customers were public-facing individuals from New York who worked in hospitals or nursing homes. After an investigation into the operation, Clifford and Barkley were arrested and each charged with offering a false instrument for filing and conspiracy, while their customers were charged with criminal possession of a forged document. As part of their efforts in bringing down the scam, officers had posed as prospective buyers. One of them contacted Clifford on June the 25th of 2021 and received a fake vaccination card after paying the fee, thus securing evidence against her. Another undercover officer paid to be introduced into the New York vaccine database, and Clifford subsequently sent them a screenshot indicating his info had been added. Thanks for watching. Would you give your mother or father-in-law a lap dance for $10,000 in return? Let us know in the comment section below.